Hi, friends. All right, here's a question. Sometimes I get this question. Will we be able to eat and drink in heaven? And the answer is yeah. I mean, if Jesus is the model of our resurrected life, then the answer would be yeah. It looks like we're going to be able to eat and drink in heaven. How so? Well, let's go to a couple of the resurrection accounts, like the one that's in Luke 24. And this is where Jesus appears to his disciples. And they're fearful because this is on the day of the resurrection. So they're thinking that and this is the first time they're seeing him, they're thinking that he's a ghost. And Jesus says to them, look at my hands and my feet and see that I'm not a ghost. And they're like, okay, wow, you don't look like you are a ghost. But they're still, Luke records to us, incredulous with joy and possibility, but they're still struggling with this. And he says, look, do you have anything to eat? And they had some baked fish and they gave it to him. And Luke records that he ate it there in front of them. And so just in that one resurrection account, we see that Jesus' resurrected body is able to take in food. Now, of course, the question becomes, does he need the food? And probably not, he's God, right? But will we need the food in the resurrection? I would say probably not, because in the life of heaven, all that we need is God. But we do have a body in the life of heaven, not just a soul. And that's worth explaining too a little bit, just for a moment. So we're taught from the scriptures that when we die, our soul first goes to, well, when we're looking at the Old Testament, it goes to Sheol, the place of the dead, because the reality of the resurrection had not yet been fully revealed. It's only as you get closer to the life of Jesus that we start to see a certain section of Judaism even believe in the resurrection. And we see that in the Pharisees. Remember that the Pharisees are the ones who believed in the resurrection and things like angels and so on. But it was the Sadducees, which were an older sect of the Jewish leadership, that did not believe in the resurrection of the body. In fact, some of them didn't even believe in the afterlife. So by the time we get to Jesus, he's full on and revealing the fullness of the Father's plan for humanity, including that at one point, it's not just going to be our souls at the moment we die and we go before God and we're judged and we end up either in heaven or hell, and if it's heaven, a little pit stop in purgatory. But at some point, our bodies are going to join our souls in heaven. Well, where do we see that? Again, many New Testament accounts, but we see that, for instance, in Philippians 3:21, where St. Paul reminds us that Jesus will transform our lowly bodies to become like his body, his own glorious body. Well, that glorious body is the resurrected body. When's that going to happen? Again, we see this in different parts of the New Testament, but we see multiple times in the book of Revelation that when Christ comes again, when the Messiah comes again, when the Son of God comes again in his second coming, that he is going to make a new heaven and a new earth, meaning apply his redemption to all of creation, And at that point, we see in the book of Revelation that our bodies are going to rise from the graves, and they are going to join our souls, and we will, in heaven, be both soul and body. We'll be mind, body, and soul. So there is enough in the scriptures to be able to tell us that for a while when we die, it will just be soul in heaven, but then when in the fullness of time, at the end of the ages, our bodies and our souls will join together. But then we also get to see in Jesus who St. Paul says is the firstborn among the dead, that he's the model for our own resurrected bodies. We get to see glimpses of what that will look like for us, such as that account from Luke 24 where Jesus takes in food. But there are other accounts where Jesus appears, like in John 20, it says that the disciples are in the upper room again and they're behind locked doors. But Jesus is able to get in. So in his glorified, resurrected body, he's able to go through locked doors. And in another account, we see where Jesus appears to many people all at once. So how much of this is going to be our lives? We don't know that. I don't think anyone knows that. But Jesus is giving us a glimpse that when we get our bodies back again, that they're going to be glorified bodies. There's going to be resurrected bodies, and they're going to be our bodies, but they're going to be more. Meaning they're going to be redeemed. Meaning they're going to be made perfect. They're going to be what they were always meant to be. We're going to be who we were always meant to be, but because of the fall, we've never been able to realize ourselves fully in our bodies and our minds and our souls, freely alive, fully alive, the way we were created to be. And Jesus accomplishes that for us. So when we're in heaven, for instance, I think while we're here in this life, this should fill us with so much hope. And it should inform the way that we live our lives here and now, and guide our hope. So what am I getting at here? Well, in our fallen state, our bodies are susceptible to the frailties of age. I've been jogging all my life, and the docs tell me that I'm starting to develop arthritis in my lower back. So I feel the pain sometimes when I get up in the morning or throughout the day at moments. And sometimes there are more than moments. People who are a lot older than me tell me, you ain't seen nothing yet, kid, that it's going to get worse before it gets better. So we're susceptible to the frailties of age. We're susceptible to disease and the pain and the suffering that goes along with that, right? Or even just step away from that. What about people who have never, ever seen? They've been blind all their life. Or people who have never been able to hear, or never been able to speak, or never been able to walk, or have other physical or mental incapacities. What about individuals like that? All of us, in the resurrection of our bodies, are going to be free of all that. and we're going to be fully alive and fully who we're meant to be. So anything that we've been struggling with here and now throughout our life, we're not going to struggle with in the life of heaven. And we're going to be perfected in the presence of God. But it doesn't stop there, right? Because in the resurrected bodies in heaven, we're not just going to be able to see or somehow in a spiritual way experience the presence of God as disembodied souls, so kind of ethereal spirits. We're actually going to be able to touch the face of Jesus Christ, who's fully God and fully man, with the fullness of who we are. We're going to be able to embrace him, to wrap our arms around him. We're going to be able to be embraced by him and know what that feels like through all of our senses. That is going to be incredible, that embrace alone, like no other embrace with any other person. And it doesn't stop there, because when God redeems us, when he redeems the earth and the heavens, he's going to redeem everything that's a part of his creation. And that means that we're going to be able to experience God throughout all of eternity and all that dwell in God. Because here's the thing. What is heaven? It's not some place up there as much as it is a state of being in the presence of God. And all that have been redeemed, all the persons and all the creation that he has redeemed, they're all going to be existing in the presence of God forever. And so what does that mean? That means that this infinite God is never going to exhaust himself on us. There's always going to be more of him. There's always going to be more of the life that is going to unfold for us. There's never going to be a time in which he stops revealing more of himself to us. And this should play against the caricature that we have of heaven. That I know it's a caricature, but it has deeply affected the way that we live our lives, even as Christians. And the caricature goes something like this. When we die, we get a cloud, and then we get a white robe, and we get a harp. And we start playing that harp for billions and trillions and quadrillions of years. And no wonder people are grasping at everything that they could possibly experience here and now in this life, because somehow they believe that they're not going to be able to experience more and better fully as humans, mind, body, and soul, in the life of heaven. That life in heaven is going to be boring. So we might as well get our fun in now, right? But if we follow who Jesus is, and we follow his resurrection, and we follow the scriptures, and we follow what eternity is, and the promises that God is going to fulfill in the life of heaven, we ain't seen nothing yet in this life on earth, right? Well, what does that mean for us? That means that it should affect and inform the way we live our lives now, so that we're not spending our lives in such a way that we're grasping at every possible experience now, because we don't think that we're going to have those experiences in the life of heaven. And a lot of those experiences that we grasp for now are what leads us into sin, right? Because we're grasping for things sometimes that God doesn't want us to have, and that actually are not good for us. They may even be good, but they may not be good for us. And God has something better and more for us in the life of heaven. Here's where this should go then. I live a life as a priest, and so we know the sacrifices that priests make, and I'm making those sacrifices, but so are you, right? Just in different ways. If you're married, you're making the sacrifice of only being with your spouse as your lifelong love for the rest of your life, and not being with other partners. You're making the sacrifice of being faithful to him or her rather than being unfaithful, because somehow you're missing out on other partner relationships, right? You're making that sacrifice. And you're willing to do that because this person is the most important person for you, or should be. Or think about your life as mom and dad. You're making certain sacrifices for your children, and there may be times in which you or I might think to ourselves, I'm making these sacrifices and I'm missing out on life. And you start to maybe wonder about what that life looks like, or you miss that life, or you feel that nostalgia for something that you've never had in your life. Whatever, right? But the true message, the full message of the resurrection is that you're not missing out on anything. In fact, what you're going for, what is most important to you in this life? God and other people. And you're living for the most important things in this life. And if that means that you're letting go of some other things, like other people, if you're married, or you're putting so much of your time and energy into your children, and for all of us, putting God first and foremost in our lives, it doesn't mean that somehow you're missing out on life now. It means, in fact, you're going to get so much more in the afterlife, because you're going to get heaven rather than not heaven, right? And you're going to get the fullness of what the resurrection is. And you're going to get that not just in some disembodied soul. You're going to get that as mind, body, and soul, and mind, body, and soul fully what it was meant to be, perfected. And when you're with God in heaven, it won't be just for 100 years or 1,000 years or 10,000 years or 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000 or quadrillion years. It'll be more than that. It'll be forever. And God will never exhaust himself on you. And you'll never get exhausted. You'll never reach a point like a million years into your existence in heaven where you arrive and you're like, okay, I've experienced everything that God has to offer me in himself and all of that he's redeemed. And now I have to sit around for an endless amount of time and be bored because I've experienced him, right? No, he's infinite. And you'll never arrive at a point where there's never more of him. There'll always be more. What that should be doing for us as Christians who make very real sacrifices. I'm not going to lie about that. And why would we, right? And choose things in this life in order to be the people that God created us to be. And then therefore, don't choose some things that the world is throwing at us. And somehow think that we're missing out. You're not. The message of the resurrection should give all of us in our varied states of life, in our varied states of age, in our bodies, in our minds, in our relationships. It should give all of us hope, right? That the state of our body right now is not going to be permanent. And we're going to be in our bodies fully who we're capable of being and able to experience all that God offers us in the redeemed heaven and earth, right? But also that it will be unending. Heaven is going to be far more fun than all the fun that we could possibly be pursuing in this life. And far more and better and beautiful are the relationships that we'll have in heaven that are perfected than the ones that are good now but are imperfect. So heaven and what God offers us in the resurrection is worth living for and sacrificing for and dying for. And then living fully forever for and with God and others. Beautiful. The message of the gospel is beautiful. And it should forever affect the way we live our lives here and now. Until next time, friends.